Hey, Dan Passarelli here. Happy Friday. Well, the S&P 500 was down a little under $2 on the week from last Friday's close. And this was the week where we had our first big deal announcement of the tariffs, and it just wasn't really enough to do anything. Right now, we're sitting below the 200-day moving average, which acts as a strong source of resistance, but below the market, we have the 50-day moving average acting as a source of support. So what are we likely to do? Well, from a technical standpoint, maybe not a lot. We might be in one of those rest or coiling periods right now for the short term. But that's all going to be news contingent. Next week, we have CPI and PPI being announced. The general public follows those pretty closely as inflation gauges, though the Fed prefers PCE data, but it's still important to them. So we're going to have an eye on both consumer and producer prices. But really, the big news that people are talking about is not how many Chicago-style hot dogs the new Pope has had in his lifetime, but even more importantly, the conversation that will be starting between the U.S. and China about tariffs. Now, here's the thing where it comes to the market digesting news. Yes, that conversation is a big deal. The U.S. imports about $440 billion worth of goods from China. That's what they did in 2024 anyway. So it's a big deal. But here's the thing. Trump, who on the U.S. side is the person who's in charge of making the decisions on this, he said that these conversations are just going to be starting. So the administration in the U.S. doesn't look to believe that these talks are going to get wrapped up this weekend. They're just starting. But the market kind of thinks about it, it seems to me anyway, from what I can infer from news sources, from talking to people, and from price action, the market seems to be trading like we're going to have a deal announced by Monday, but that's just very, very, very unlikely. And that could set us up for some disappointment. Now, the VIX is still sitting up at 2190. It was down a little bit today, but it's always a little bit lower on Fridays, just sort of how the math works out. And it tends to go higher on Mondays. So we could definitely see a jump in the VIX Monday. There normally is a little bit of one, but that could be much more pronounced if the expectation holds true that there is not a deal announced with the tariffs for China. We might start the week off rocking on Monday. Give you something to think about this weekend. Hope that helps. This is Dan Passarelli. Trade smart and have a nice weekend.